It's my pleasure to introduce the co-founder and president of Lean In, Rachel. Come on up here. Rachel Thomas from Lean In, and she's going to take us through a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So about a year ago, I was at a conference on workplace well-being, and I looked out in the audience and I made a comment, wow, it's about 50-50% women and men, that's great. And to your earlier question, the woman standing next to me, Maxine Williams, who runs diversity at Facebook and is a woman of color, she said, Rachel, look again. And so I looked back at the audience, and in all honesty, it looked a lot like today's audience. Very few minorities. When I looked through her eyes, I saw something different. Men always ask, what can we do? How can we play our part? How can we support women? Just a second, clicker. There we go. And one of the things that men can do is you can take a second look at women and women's experiences. Do me a favor, raise your hand if you've ever been called too aggressive at work. So there's always some men, but we travel all over the country, and Cheryl's traveled all over the world, and we talk to groups of people. And whenever we ask the question, and it's an audience of women, every hand in the audience goes up. When women assert themselves, we often see them as being too aggressive. We like them less. If you took out your phone right now and you Googled Hillary Clinton and ambition and Donald Trump and ambition, you would see something very different. Hillary, unbridled ambition. She's ruthlessly ambitious. Trump, he has an ambitious deportation plan. He works on ambitious projects. He's proud and ambitious. We have a different reaction to women in leadership versus men in leadership. There's a great woman named Karen Snyder. For those of you who are familiar with her, she is a linguist, and she runs a company called Textio. And what Textio does is it looks at language and things like job descriptions and performance reviews, all types of language, but particularly gendered language. So they recently did a study. They looked at 170 performance reviews conducted by both men and women, and what it found is women are 50% more likely to hear critical feedback in their reviews. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you start to think about personal critical feedback, about you as a person, your personality, how you interact with people, comments like, you are abrasive sometimes, you need to pay attention to your tone, or your peers sometimes think you don't leave enough room, step back to let others shine. 71 of 94 reviews of women included comments on them personally. Only 2 of 83 reviews of men. We're having a different relationship with men and women when they assert themselves. So what's going on and what can we do about it? A lot of this, and we just had the panel up talking about media, a lot of this is rooted in age-old stereotypes and expectations of what it means to be a man and what it needs to be a woman. When we think of women, the stereotype is nurturing, collaborative, kind. When we think of men, strong, assertive, in the lead. So what happens is when men lead, we're really comfortable with it. We expect you to lead. We celebrate you when you do. When women lead, it can be a little bit more complicated. It's not the expectation. So sometimes women face pushback. And I want to be really clear. When I say we, I mean everybody. I don't mean men are doing this. I mean men and women are doing this. We all fall into these stereotypes. And I also want to be clear, it's unconscious. I don't believe anyone in this room is walking around going, wow, when women assert themselves, I really don't like them. This is really unconscious, it's deep-rooted, and it's powerful. So one of the things that you can do is you can look for and listen for the language of what we call the likability penalty. When you hear a woman called political, pushy, out for herself, stop and ask, what exactly did that woman do? And when you hear the answer, follow up with, would you feel the same way if a man did the same thing? You'll be surprised by how often the answer is no. And this makes a big difference. Think to yourself, Who would you rather promote? The man who has high marks across the board, or the woman, really high performance, but not as well liked by her peers? Exactly, you'd promote the man. And do this for yourselves as well. If you have an adverse reaction to a woman, just stop and say, you know, would I feel the same way if a man just said that or a man just did that? I have to admit, for the last 2 years, I've been putting my interactions with women through this very likability test. I'm a woman myself, I run a women's organization, and I still fall into the trap of judging women more harshly. The other thing we need to do is look again and realize women are not having the same experience that you are. So before I founded Lean In, I co-founded an ed tech startup called Subtext. And we needed to pitch, we needed to raise money. So I built our deck and I ran our pitches. And after about our second VC pitch, my co-founder, but who also happened to technically be my boss, he was CEO, he said, Rachel, I'm really disappointed in you. You're not pitching in during the Q&A. You're not giving me enough support. And I said, Andrew, do me a favor. At the next pitch, watch. So he went and did the pitch, and on the way out, door had just shut, we're on the sidewalk, and he says, oh my God, they don't ask you any questions. I can't believe you're speaking as much as you do. And this is important for 2 reasons. One, until he looked again, he didn't see that I was having a different experience, but also, he was penalizing me for it. Rightfully so. I should have been participating, I should have been supporting him. And this is very common. This is the experience that women often have in meetings. Research tells us women get less airtime, and they often get less credit for their ideas. In fact, in a typical meeting, women talk about 25% of the time. We also know that women are more likely to be interrupted than men, and to be clear, more likely to be interrupted by both men and women. So do a little social science experiment the next time you're in a meeting and watch for 2 things. First, watch where women sit in the room. Research will tell you women will often sit at the edge of the room, kind of away from the positions of power. And then count. How many times are the women and men at the meeting interrupted? And you'll be surprised by what you see. We also know that women get more blame for failure and less credit for success.